My husband lived a double life right under my nose, and his entire family helped him hide it. When I caught his mother sneaking his mistress out the back door of a party I paid for, I did not scream or throw a fit. I chose to escape far away with our twin children, taking every asset that mattered. Now my in-laws are deeply regretting everything. Before I tell you how I executed the ultimate vanishing act, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe betrayal should always come with a heavy price. The smooth sound of the jazz band playing an old classic faded as I stepped out of the main ballroom of the country club. I needed a moment to breathe away from the overwhelming perfume and loud chatter of our extended family. I am Kendra, 33 years old and a senior wealth manager at one of the top financial firms in Atlanta. My days are spent analyzing portfolios, managing high net worth clients, and anticipating financial risks before they happen. That night, however, my only job was supposed to be celebrating my mother-in-law Beverly for her 60th birthday. I had paid $15,000 to rent the elite suite. I covered the catering, the open bar, and the massive floral centerpieces because my husband Jamal insisted his mother deserved the absolute best. Jamal runs a tech startup that is constantly strapped for cash, so the financial burden of maintaining his family's pristine image always fell directly on my shoulders. I accepted it because I loved him, and I believed we were building a secure future for our 5-year-old twins, Malik and Maya. I spent my days securing investments for strangers, so that my children would never have to worry about a single thing in their lives. I walked down the quiet carpeted hallway toward the restrooms, letting the muffled sound of clinking champagne glasses fade entirely. That was when I heard the harsh, frantic whispering coming from the service exit. "Hurry up and get out through the valet doors before someone sees you." It was Beverly. Her tone was sharp and panicked, completely stripping away the sweet church-going matriarch persona she projected to the world. I slowed my pace, my heels sinking silently into the plush carpet. I peeked around the corner and froze. Beverly, in her custom-tailored silk suit, was practically shoving a younger woman toward the heavy exit doors. The young woman looked to be in her late 20s, wearing a form-fitting red dress that was entirely too flashy for a private family dinner. She was holding the hand of a little boy who looked to be about 3 years old. "I should not have to sneak out the back," Beverly, the younger woman, snapped, adjusting her grip on the toddler. "Jamal said I deserve to be here tonight. He said we are family too. Keep your voice down." "Jada," Beverly hissed, glancing nervously back toward the hallway. "I told you this was a bad idea. Kendra is paying for everything tonight, and if she sees you, this entire night is ruined. Just take the boy and wait at your house. Jamal will come see you tomorrow." The world around me seemed to tilt on its axis. My analytical brain, the one trained to spot discrepancies in complex financial spreadsheets, immediately went into overdrive. Jamal told her she deserved to be here. Jamal will come see you tomorrow. And the little boy standing there rubbing his sleepy eyes. He had Jamal's exact jawline, the same slope of his nose, the same distinctive curl pattern as my own son Malik. I did not gasp. I did not confront them with tears. I stepped fully around the corner, pushing the heavy hallway door open. It hit the wall with a loud thud that echoed down the corridor. Beverly spun around so fast she nearly lost her footing in her heels. The color completely drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and terrified. "Kendra," she gasped, forcing a high-pitched, fragile laugh that sounded like cracking glass. "What are you doing out here, sweetheart? The toasts are about to begin." I walked slowly toward them, my eyes locked on the young woman named Jada. "Who is this Beverly?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "And why are you rushing her out the back door of a party I paid for?" Beverly stepped in front of Jada, trying to physically block her from my view. "Oh, this is just Jada. She is a distant cousin from my side of the family down in Georgia. She has been struggling recently, going through a rough patch with her little boy. She got confused looking for the valet, so I was just helping her find her way out to give her some cab money. You know how our family always tries to provide charity for those in need." I looked past Beverly directly at Jada. The young woman did not look like a charity case. She stood tall, shifting her weight defiantly, meeting my gaze with a sense of entitlement that made the blood roar in my ears. She was not acting like a struggling cousin seeking a handout. She was acting like someone who believed she had a right to be standing exactly where she was. My eyes scanned her, taking in every detail. As a wealth manager, I do not deal in emotions, I deal in assets and valuations. I noticed the designer shoes, the expensive blowout, and then my gaze dropped to her collarbone. Resting against her skin was a custom 3-carat diamond tennis necklace, catching the dim hallway light and reflecting it back in brilliant, sharp flashes. I felt a cold, calculating calm wash over my entire body. I knew that necklace. I knew exactly how much it weighed, how the clasp was designed, and most importantly, I knew exactly how much it cost. Just last Tuesday, I was reviewing the monthly statements for the premium credit card I manage for Jamal. I had flagged a charge for $22,000 from an exclusive boutique jeweler downtown. When I confronted Jamal about the massive expense, he had pulled me into a hug, kissed my forehead, and swore me to secrecy. He told me it was a custom piece he was having rushed for our upcoming wedding anniversary. He begged me to release the fraud alert so the payment could clear, promising it would be a surprise that would completely take my breath away. It certainly did take my breath away, just not in the way he promised. Charity. I repeated, my voice dropping an octave as I stared directly at the $22,000 resting on his mistress's neck. That is very generous of you, Beverly. But unless your struggling cousin is my anniversary surprise, we have a very expensive problem on our hands right now. Jada's hand flew up to the diamonds, her eyes widening slightly as she realized I knew exactly what she was wearing. Beverly started stammering, stepping toward me with her hands raised in a placating gesture. Kendra, please, you are misunderstanding the situation. You work too hard and you are always so stressed and paranoid about money. Let us just go back inside and get you a glass of wine. I did not break eye contact with Jada. The little boy tugged at her red dress, whining that he was tired. I looked at the child who shared my husband's face, and the devastating reality settled heavily into my bones. My husband was funding an entire second life with the wealth I worked 60 hours a week to build, and his own mother was standing guard at the door to protect him. The silence in the service hallway was so absolute I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning vent above us. Beverly stood frozen, and Jada looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. The little boy shifted on his feet, oblivious to the fact that his mere existence was detonating my marriage. Before Beverly could string together another pathetic lie, the heavy swinging door to the private prep kitchen pushed open. My sister-in-law Chloe leaned against the doorframe. Chloe is married to Jamal's older brother Terrence. She is a pale, sharp-featured white woman who has always looked entirely out of place in our family gatherings, and she has never bothered to hide her exhaustion with Beverly's endless obsession with appearances. She held a glass of Pinot Noir in one hand, swirling the dark red liquid with lazy precision. "Did I hear someone say, charity?" Chloe drawled, her voice echoing loudly off the tiled walls. She took a slow sip of her wine and let her gaze rake over Jada from head to toe. "Because from where I am standing, that does not look like Charity Beverly. That looks like the custom 3-carat diamond tennis necklace Jamal bragged about buying last Tuesday. You remember Beverly, the one he explicitly said was an upcoming anniversary present for Kendra." Beverly whipped her head around, her perfectly styled hair trembling. "Chloe, keep your mouth shut. You do not know what you are talking about. You have had too much to drink." "Oh, I know exactly what I am talking about," Chloe countered, taking another deliberate sip. "I also know that Jamal has been acting incredibly nervous all night, keeping a close eye on the valet entrance. Now I see why." The heavy wooden doors at the end of the hall swung open again, and this time it was Jamal. My husband. The man I had shared my bed with for the past 7 years. The man whose startup I had financed, whose dreams I had funded, whose laundry I had folded. He rushed toward us, his charismatic $1 million pitch smile plastered firmly on his face. "Babe, what is going on out here?" he asked, his voice smooth and practically dripping with manufactured concern. "I noticed you stepped out. The caterers are about to serve the main course." Then he fully rounded the corner and saw the scene. He saw me standing like a statue. He saw his mother hyperventilating. He saw Chloe smirking over her wine glass. And most importantly, he saw Jada and the toddler trapped against the exit door. For a fraction of a second, Jamal's mask slipped. The charming tech founder vanished, replaced by a cornered animal. But he recovered with a terrifying speed that made my stomach turn. He stepped directly between me and Jada, blocking my view of the child. "Kendra, let us go back inside," Jamal said, reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched, stepping back so fast my shoulder hit the wall. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. "Explain this, Jamal. Explain who this woman is and why she is wearing my $22,000 anniversary present." Jamal let out a loud, forced laugh, shaking his head as if I had just told a ridiculous joke. He turned to his mother, then shot a glaring look at his sister-in-law. "Are you seriously listening to Chloe right now?" Jamal asked, throwing his hands up in the air. "She is drunk, Kendra. She has been downing wine since we arrived. This woman is just a friend of Mom from church who needed some help. Chloe is just trying to start drama because she and Terrence had a fight on the way here. You are letting her ruin Mom's 60th birthday over a misunderstanding." Chloe scoffed loudly, pushing off the doorframe. "Nice try, Jamal, but gaslighting only works on people who do not pay attention. And we both know Kendra pays attention to everything." Beverly suddenly found her voice, stepping forward to join forces with her son. She pointed a manicured finger at me, her face twisting into a scowl. "This is exactly your problem, Kendra. You are paranoid. You work these absurd 80-hour weeks staring at spreadsheets until you lose touch with reality. My son works tirelessly to build his business and provide for you, and the moment a struggling young mother comes to me for guidance, you accuse him of the unthinkable. You are ungrateful, and you are ruining a blessed occasion with your unfounded jealousy." I stood there, letting their words wash over me. A weaker woman might have cried. A less secure woman might have second-guessed herself, wondering if the stress of managing millions of dollars really was making her see things. But I am not a weak woman. I am a wealth manager, and my entire career is built on verifying data. Facts do not care about your feelings, and they certainly do not care about Beverly's church reputation. I reached into my designer clutch and pulled out my phone. The screen illuminated the dim hallway. I did not scream. I did not throw my purse. I simply opened the secure banking application that handled Jamal's corporate and personal accounts. The facial recognition unlocked the screen instantly. "You are right, Beverly," I said, my eyes fixed firmly on the digital ledger. "I do look at spreadsheets all day, which is exactly why I know that Jamal's tech startup has not turned a profit in 14 months. His company is bleeding cash." I tapped the screen, bringing up the specific American Express statement. I turned the phone around, holding it up so Jamal, Beverly, and Jada could all see the glaring numbers. "This is the charge from the jewelry boutique downtown," I stated, projecting my voice with absolute clarity. $22,450. Processed last Tuesday at 2:15 in the afternoon. The charge triggered a fraud alert because Jamal's account does not have that kind of liquidity. He called me, begging me to authorize the release. He swore it was the ultimate anniversary surprise. I personally approved the transaction, moving funds from my own annual bonus to cover it. I lowered the phone and took a step toward Jada, who was now visibly shaking, clutching the toddler to her leg. "I paid for those diamonds on your neck," I said, locking eyes with the mistress. "Just like I paid for this country club suite. Just like I pay for the roof over my husband's head." Jamal stepped forward, his voice dropping into a desperate, pleading whisper. "Kendra, please. Not here. We can talk about this at home. Just put the phone away." "You do not get to dictate where we talk about this," I replied, refusing to break eye contact. "You brought your mistress and your secret child to a party funded by my bank account. You thought I would just smile for the cameras and write the checks like I always do." Beverly tried to intervene again, grabbing my arm. "Kendra, you need to calm down and remember your place as a wife. You are causing a scene." I yanked my arm out of her grasp. "My place as a wife ended the second you decided to treat me like a human cash machine while playing bodyguard for his mistress." I turned my back on them. The truth was out in the open, hanging in the sterile air of the country club hallway. They wanted to play games with my money and my marriage, But they forgot one crucial detail. I am the one who controls the board. I walked past Chloe, who gave me a silent nod of respect, and pushed through the heavy doors, leaving the party and my broken marriage behind me. I walked out of the country club into the humid Atlanta night air and handed my valet ticket to the attendant. My phone buzzed continuously in my designer purse. Jamal calling, Beverly texting, Terrence calling. I ignored all of it. I tipped the valet a 50, slid into the driver's seat of my SUV, and drove away from the rolling green lawns of the golf course without shedding a single tear. Crying is a biological response to pain and confusion. I was not confused. I was in a state of absolute surgical precision. By the time I pulled into the driveway of the 5-bedroom estate, I paid the mortgage on my phone screen, lit up with a text message from Jamal. Babe, I am staying here to calm my mother down. Please let us talk when I get home. It is not what you think. I scoffed at the glowing text. Of course he was staying behind. He needed the time to get his story straight with Beverly and figure out how much damage control he had to do with Jada. He actually thought I was going to cry into my pillow and wait for him to come home with a bouquet of empty apologies. He forgot who he married. I walked through the heavy double front doors and paid the teenage babysitter, thanking her for putting the kids to bed. After she locked the door behind her, I stood in the quiet foyer, letting the silence of the house wash over me. I walked upstairs and pushed open the door to the twins' bedroom. My 5-year-olds were sleeping soundly, their small chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Malik had one arm thrown over his dinosaur blanket, and Maya was curled up tightly with her favorite stuffed bear. I kissed their warm foreheads, a fierce protective fire igniting deep in my chest. Nobody was going to jeopardize their future. Not Beverly, not Jada, and certainly not Jamal. I went straight down the hall to Jamal's home office. He always paraded around as a brilliant tech genius because he founded a software startup, but his cybersecurity hygiene was an absolute joke. He used the same variations of his fraternity initiation year for every single password he owned. As a senior wealth manager, I spend my days navigating heavily encrypted institutional financial networks and running risk assessments on corporate portfolios. Bypassing Jamal's laptop login took me less than 40 seconds. I sat down in his leather ergonomic chair and woke up his dual monitors. I opened his personal banking portals, his business expense accounts, and the hidden credit lines he thought I did not know about. I was fully prepared to find digital receipts for luxury hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and maybe a lease agreement for a high-rise apartment for his mistress. I started pulling transaction histories, exporting years of data into a master spreadsheet. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I sorted the columns by vendor, by amount, and by recurring charges. My eyes scanned the raw data, filtering out his legitimate business expenses to isolate the anomalies. There were the expected charges of infidelity: $1,000 at a high-end steakhouse downtown, $3,000 for a luxury weekend getaway to Miami that he had explicitly claimed was an investor networking conference. But then my eyes caught a sequence of transactions that made my blood run completely cold. It was not a luxury purchase for Jada. It was an automated wire transfer. $4,000 scheduled on the first of every single month, sent directly to an institution called Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy. I stared at the glowing screen, the blue light reflecting in the dark office. Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy is an elite private preschool on the north side of the city. It boasts early bilingual immersion programs, organic catered lunches, and a waiting list that is 3 years long. My breath caught sharply in my throat. My twins Malik and Maya attend the local public kindergarten. They ride the yellow county school bus every morning. I had wanted to send my children to a private academy last year. I had drafted comprehensive financial spreadsheets showing him that we could easily afford the tuition if we simply adjusted our investment contributions. But Jamal had sat me down at our kitchen island, looking incredibly stressed and exhausted, begging me to hold off. He insisted his startup was dangerously cash poor. He looked me in the eyes and said he needed every available dollar to keep his company afloat so he could secure our family's long-term future. I had compromised. I had put my own children in crowded public classrooms to support my husband's entrepreneurial dream. And all the while, my husband was spending $48,000 a year to send his mistress's child to a premium academy. The massive bonus checks I earned by working 60-hour weeks were funding a top-tier education for a child he kept hidden from me while he told me we needed to tighten our belts at home. I did not scream. I did not throw his expensive laptop against the wall. I simply hit the print command. The laser printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out page after page of undeniable financial proof. I picked up the thick stack of papers, the ink still warm against my skin, and ran my finger down the transaction details. I noticed something strange about the routing number attached to the preschool payments. The money did not come from Jamal's main checking account or his business accounts. It originated from an external banking institution I had never seen before. It was a hidden account operating completely outside of our household finances. I cracked my knuckles and typed the routing details into my tracing software. I needed to know where the money was coming from and exactly who was funding this secondary life. It was time to find out who else in this family was helping him hide his money. The tracing software took less than 3 minutes to pull the institution data. It was a regional credit union on the opposite side of Atlanta, a modest mid-tier bank that we would never use for our primary wealth management or corporate portfolios. It was the perfect place to hide money if you wanted to avoid the scrutiny of high-level institutional audits. I ran a secondary query using Jamal's social security number, cross-referencing it with the routing data on the screen. The account details populated instantly on my right monitor. It was a standard joint checking account. The primary account holder was Jamal. The secondary authorized user was Beverly. My hands hovered over the keyboard as the sheer magnitude of the betrayal settled into the quiet room. My mother-in-law, the woman who sat in the front pew of her mega church every Sunday, wearing a custom-tailored hat, passing judgment on everyone who did not meet her pristine standards. The woman who quoted scripture at holiday dinners and constantly lectured me on the biblical duties of a supportive wife. She was not just keeping Jamal's secret to protect her son, she was actively managing the logistics of his infidelity. She was his financial mule. I pulled the full statement history dating back 3 years. I needed to see exactly how they were funding this shadow account. I opened my own personal banking records on the left monitor and started comparing the timelines line by line, date by date. The money flowing into Beverly and Jamal's joint account was not coming from his tech startup. It was coming directly from me. Every time I secured a major client portfolio at my firm, I received a substantial performance bonus. Jamal and I had an agreement regarding our wealth-building strategy. To maximize our tax benefits and give his startup the capital runway it needed, I would transfer 50% of my bonus payouts into his corporate holding account. He told me it was an investment in our empire. He looked me in the eyes and promised it would secure early retirement for us and generational wealth for Malik and Maya. Instead, the moment my hard-earned funds hit his corporate account, he was executing a backdoor wire transfer straight into the credit union account he shared with his mother. I clicked into the detailed transaction descriptions to see exactly how Beverly was deploying my money. She was not just hoarding the cash. She was the operational manager of my husband's second family. I saw weekly grocery charges at a Whole Foods located in an upscale neighborhood 30 miles away from Beverly's own home. I saw direct payments to municipal water and electric companies attached to a residential address I did not recognize. I saw pediatric dental copays. I saw thousands of dollars spent at luxury baby boutiques, high-end furniture stores, and boutique daycares. Beverly was grocery shopping for my husband's mistress. She was paying the light bill for the house where Jada lived. She was buying organic snacks and designer clothes for a child that was not mine, using the very money I earned by sacrificing precious time with my own children. A cold, furious clarity washed over me. I thought about the countless nights I stayed at the office until 9 o'clock, analyzing market trends and finalizing client pitches, while the teenage babysitter put Malik and Maya to sleep. I justified those missed bedtimes, because I believed I was building an impenetrable fortress of security for my twins. The mother-in-law who constantly criticized me for working late, telling me I needed to be home more to be a proper mother, was literally taking the financial fruits of my labor to subsidize a woman who did nothing but lay on her back. Beverly used my guilt against me while spending my paycheck to play fairy godmother to Jada. The laser printer in the corner of the office whirred to life again, churning out page after page and dropping the sheets into the output tray. I collected the warm papers aligning the edges perfectly on the mahogany desk. I stapled the preschool invoices to the credit union statements. I stapled the utility payments to the transfer logs, matching my exact bonus payouts, down to the penny. I built a physical paper trail of their absolute treachery. They thought I was just a walking automated teller machine too busy generating wealth to notice where the runoff was flowing. They forgot that I am a financial architect. I build wealth for a living, and I know exactly how to dismantle a house of cards. I took a red pen from the desk drawer and circled the matching transfer amounts. I highlighted Beverly's name on the grocery receipts. I drew a direct line from my corporate bonus deposits to Jada's luxury lifestyle. I arranged the stack of evidence neatly in the center of Jamal's desk, illuminating it beneath the glow of the desk lamp. I closed out of all the banking portals, wiped the search history, and pushed the chair back. The heavy front door downstairs unlocked and swung open. I heard Jamal's heavy footsteps echoing in the foyer, followed by his voice calling out my name. He was pitching his voice to sound exhausted and apologetic, playing the role of the beleaguered husband who just had to endure a dramatic misunderstanding. He thought he could walk up those stairs, flash that charismatic smile, and talk his way out of a $22,000 necklace. He had no idea that the necklace was just the appetizer. The time for data collection was officially over. It was time to present my findings. I gathered the thick stack of printed statements and walked out of the home office. My heels made no sound on the plush runner as I descended the curved staircase. Jamal was standing at the kitchen island, his tie loosened and the top two buttons of his crisp white shirt undone. He was pouring a glass of sparkling water, looking for all the world like a hard-working husband exhausted by family drama. He looked up as I entered the kitchen and immediately deployed the signature smile that had charmed venture capitalists and angel investors across Atlanta. "Kendra, babe," he sighed, setting the glass down and rubbing a hand over his close-cut fade. "I am so sorry about that mess at the club. You know how Chloe gets when she drinks. She is just bitter because Terrence cut off her credit cards again. My mother is an absolute wreck right now. She was just trying to help someone from the congregation, and Chloe turned it into a circus. I told my mom we would talk to her tomorrow once everyone calms down." He reached across the marble island to take my hand. I did not flinch. I simply looked at his outstretched fingers and then dropped the heavy stack of printed financial documents directly onto the marble counter. The loud slap of paper against stone echoed sharply in the large kitchen, cutting off his pathetic monologue. "I am not interested in Chloe," I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly flat. "I am interested in Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy." Jamal froze. His hand hung in the air for a second before he slowly pulled it back. He looked down at the top sheet of paper. I had placed the invoice from the elite preschool right on top, highlighted in bright red ink. The name of the student was clearly printed next to Jada's emergency contact information. He swallowed hard, his charismatic mask slipping just enough to reveal the absolute panic underneath. He picked up the paper, his eyes darting across the highlighted routing numbers. He started, his voice catching slightly. "This is an outreach program, Kendra. My company sponsors a few underprivileged kids for early education. It is a corporate tax write-off." I slapped my palm flat against the stack of papers. "Do not insult my intelligence, Jamal." I traced the routing number. "It leads to a credit union account in your name and your mother's name. An account entirely funded by the performance bonuses I transfer into your corporate holding account. You are taking my money, paying your mother to act as a financial mule, and dropping $4,000 a month to send your mistress's child to a private academy, while Malik and Maya ride a public school bus. Jamal dropped the paper as if it had burned his fingers. He stared at me, realizing there was no lie clever enough to dismantle a perfectly documented audit. The panic in his eyes vanished, replaced instantly by a defensive, furious rage. He hated being caught. He hated being outsmarted. But most of all, he hated being reminded that I was the one pulling the strings of his entire existence. He slammed both hands down on the island, leaning aggressively toward me. "You always do this," Jamal shouts, his voice booming off the custom cabinetry. "Just like when you audited my startup 3 years ago and almost tanked my Series A funding because you didn't trust my math. You cannot just be a wife, Kendra. You have to be an interrogator. You have to control every single dollar and make sure everyone knows you are the smartest person in the room." I did not back away. I leaned in, mirroring his aggressive posture. "Do not you dare bring up the Series A funding," I fired back, my tone dripping with absolute disdain. "Your math was not just wrong, Jamal. It was fraudulent. You were inflating user acquisition metrics and burning through your seed capital to buy tailored suits and lease a Porsche you could not afford, just to impress investors who saw right through you. I did not almost tank your funding. I saved it." I pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly at his chest. "I spent 3 weeks restructuring your entire financial model. I rewrote your business plan. I legally sanitized your gross negligence, and I hand-fed that pitch deck to the venture capitalists. Your company is a hollow shell, and the only reason you have a corner office today is because I built the floor beneath your feet." Jamal's jaw clenched so tight a muscle ticked rapidly in his cheek. He hated hearing the truth out loud. He had spent the last 3 years playing the role of the self-made tech visionary, gracing local business magazine covers and speaking on entrepreneurial panels. But every time he looked at his own balance sheets, he knew the undeniable reality. He was a mascot. I was the architect. That is exactly your problem, he spat, venom lacing every word. "You emasculate me, Kendra. You look at me like I am just another one of your client portfolios to be managed and corrected. You never look at me like a man. You treat me like an employee who cannot get the job done right." "And Jada treats you like a king?" I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. "Is that it? She strokes your ego while you buy her diamonds using my paycheck. She makes you feel like a big, strong provider because she does not know that your entire empire is subsidized by your wife." Jamal scoffed, shaking his head with a bitter, ugly laugh. "Jada respects me. She appreciates what I do. She does not demand a spreadsheet every time I make a move. She actually knows how to be a woman." "She knows how to be a parasite," I corrected coldly. "And you know how to be a fraud. You needed a woman who was financially illiterate so you could finally feel superior. But you are not superior, Jamal. You are a thief. You stole from our family's future to fund your own fragile ego." Jamal sneered, stepping around the island to close the distance between us, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me. "You think you are so untouchable, Kendra. You think because you make the big money you own me. You do not own me, and you do not control me." I stood my ground, looking up at the man I thought I was building a legacy with. I saw him clearly now. There was no partnership. There was only a parasite draining his host. I had carried his financial deadweight for years, believing in his potential while he actively diverted my wealth to build a second family in the shadows. He wanted to play the role of the dominant provider while reaching his hands deep into my pockets. I did not say another word to him. I simply looked at his furious, ego-driven face, turned on my heel, and walked out of the kitchen. Let him yell. Let him throw a tantrum and feel powerful for the night. I had already gathered the ammunition I needed, but his extreme defensiveness told me everything I needed to know. If he was willing to lie about preschool tuition and diamonds, he was definitely hiding something much larger. I walked straight back up the stairs and headed straight for my office. My audit was far from over. I heard the heavy slam of the front door vibrating through the floorboards. Jamal had stormed out. His tires screeched against the asphalt of the driveway as he sped off into the night, undoubtedly heading straight back to his mother or his mistress to lick his wounded ego. I did not care where he went. His physical absence was exactly what I needed. I walked into my home office and locked the heavy oak door behind me. I sat back down at my desk, the glow of the dual monitors illuminating the dark room. My heart rate was steady. The adrenaline of the kitchen confrontation had completely faded, replaced by the cold, calculating focus that made me one of the top wealth managers in the city. Jamal thought our fight was about disrespect. He thought throwing a tantrum would make me back down. He drastically underestimated the woman he married. If my husband was willing to funnel thousands of dollars a month through his mother to fund a secret family, I had to assume my entire financial foundation was compromised. I could no longer trust the shared ledgers or the tax returns he handed me at the end of every fiscal year. I needed raw, unfiltered data. I bypassed my standard banking apps and logged directly into the major credit bureaus, pulling my comprehensive credit reports from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I paid the premium fees to access the most detailed historical records available, bypassing the consumer-facing summaries to view the raw institutional data. As the reports populated across my screens, I systematically checked every open line of credit, every revolving account, and every active loan attached to my Social Security number. Everything looked normal at first. The primary mortgage on our Atlanta estate was perfectly up to date. My personal credit cards had zero balances. My auto loans were cleared. Then my eyes hit a section near the bottom of the TransUnion report under secured real estate loans. There was an active line of credit that I did not recognize. It was attached to our vacation property, a luxury cabin on Lake Oconee that we had purchased outright 3 years ago. We bought that property in cash using a massive portfolio liquidation I had executed specifically so we would own it free and clear. It was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place to take Malik and Maya during the summer, but the screen in front of me showed a massive liability attached to that exact address. A second mortgage had been taken out 14 months ago. The principal amount was $250,000. I stopped breathing. The air in my office felt suddenly thick and heavy. $250,000. I leaned closer to the monitor, tracing the account details with my index finger. The lender was a mid-tier online bank known for fast approvals and minimal underwriting scrutiny. The monthly payments were being automatically deducted from a corporate account I did not have direct oversight of. Jamal had leveraged our fully paid-off vacation home to extract $250,000 in liquid cash. But a second mortgage on a jointly owned property requires both signatures. I never signed a single piece of paper regarding the Lake Oconee house since the day we closed on it. My hands flew across the keyboard. I logged into the county clerk's online public records portal for the county where our lake house was located. I navigated through the property tax records and deed transfers until I found the specific lien recorded 14 months ago. I paid the digital fee to download the scanned document of the original loan application. The 50-page file downloaded instantly. I scrolled through the standard boilerplate terms and conditions, the amortization schedules, and the legal disclosures until I reached the final signature pages. There it was. My name was signed in blue ink right next to Jamal's, but it was not my signature. The loops were too wide, the slant was entirely wrong, and the pressure of the pen stroke lacked my usual sharp angles. It was a remarkably sloppy forgery. Jamal had forged my signature to steal $250,000 in equity from my own property. But Jamal could not have executed this level of real estate fraud on his own. Online lenders still require notarized identification for remote closings on secured property loans. Someone had to verify under penalty of perjury that I was physically present and signing that document. I scrolled down to the bottom of the page to look at the official notary block. I expected to see a fake stamp or the name of some random corrupt official Jamal had bribed. Instead, I saw a name I recognized instantly. The official state notary stamp pressed firmly over my forged signature belonged to Terrence, Jamal's older brother. I stared at the black ink of Terrence's official seal until the letters blurred together. Terrence, the quiet, supportive brother-in-law who always brought my twins their favorite toys on their birthdays. The man who sat at my Thanksgiving table last year, bowing his head in prayer, while holding his wife Chloe's hand. Terrence was a licensed real estate broker and a registered notary public in the state of Georgia. He knew the law. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had willfully and illegally stamped a document confirming I was physically present to sign away my own assets while I was sitting in my office working to support his brother's fake empire. The magnitude of the conspiracy crashed over me like a tidal wave. This was not just a cheating husband hiding a mistress. This was a coordinated, highly organized family syndicate designed to extract and redirect my wealth. Beverly was laundering the stolen money through her credit union to pay for Jada's lifestyle. Terrence was leveraging his professional licenses to commit federal mortgage fraud and falsify real estate documents. Jamal was the mastermind orchestrating the theft from the inside. They were all in on it. His entire family was legally and financially complicit in defrauding me. They sat at my dining table, smiled in my face, ate the food I paid for, and quietly robbed me blind. I leaned back in my chair, the leather squeaking in the silent room. Jamal taking $250,000 explained everything. It explained how he kept his failing tech startup afloat during the last fiscal quarter. It explained how he afforded the $22,000 diamond necklace. It explained the massive cash flow Beverly was funneling to Jada. They built a shadow economy using my stolen equity, and now they had handed me the exact weapon I needed to destroy them. Adultery is a moral failing that gets you a messy divorce. Forging a signature on a $250,000 mortgage with a fraudulent notary stamp is a federal crime that gets you hard prison time. I printed the county clerk documents, the forged signature page, and the page displaying Terrence's official notary stamp. I placed them meticulously into a crisp manila folder right next to the preschool invoices and Beverly's grocery receipts. My tears were completely gone. The hurt of the betrayal had been entirely eclipsed by the cold, absolute certainty of what I had to do next. I picked up my phone and opened the group chat that included Jamal, Beverly, and Terrence. I did not ask where Jamal was. I did not mention Jada or the diamonds. I typed a single simple message. We need to have a family meeting tomorrow evening at my house. All of you. Do not be late. I hit send and watched the message deliver. They thought they had successfully played me for a fool. They were about to learn what happens when you try to steal from the person who manages the bank. I walked into my own living room the following evening carrying the manila folder under my arm like a loaded weapon. I had spent the entire day at my firm, meticulously securing my client portfolios and moving my personal liquid assets into newly established accounts that Jamal could never access. I was ready to drop the federal mortgage fraud documents onto the glass coffee table and watch my husband and his brother scramble for a defense attorney. But the moment my heels clicked against the hardwood floor of the living area, my strategic timeline was entirely derailed. I had summoned Jamal, Beverly, and Terrence. I expected a tense defensive audience. I did not expect an ambush. Sitting right in the center of my custom cream-colored Italian leather sofa was Jada. She was wearing a pair of designer jeans I recognized from my own credit card statements, and she was holding a teacup from the wedding china my grandmother gifted me. Jamal stood directly behind the sofa, resting one hand protectively on the upholstery near her shoulder. Terrence sat in the armchair to the left, scrolling through his phone as if he were waiting for a dentist appointment rather than a family reckoning. And standing in front of the fireplace, wearing her Sunday best pearl necklace and matching tailored blazer, was Beverly. She looked like a general preparing to address her troops. I stopped dead in my tracks. My grip tightened on the manila folder. I had expected them to walk in making excuses or demanding to know why I called them. I had completely underestimated their sheer unadulterated audacity. They did not come here to be confronted. They came here to stage an intervention on me. Kendra Beverly started, her voice adopting that sickly sweet, high-pitched tone she used when testifying at church. "We are so glad you called this meeting. Jamal told us about the little misunderstanding at the country club last night, and we all agreed it was time to bring everything into the light. The Lord demands truth in all things, and we are here to walk in that truth together as a family." I stared at her, letting the absolute absurdity of her words sink in. A little misunderstanding. That was what they were calling a secret family funded by my stolen wages. I looked directly at Jada. Get off my sofa, I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the large room with absolute authority. Jada flinched slightly, but Jamal immediately stepped around the sofa to block my view of her. Now, Kendra, he said, raising his hands in a placating gesture, do not start acting crazy. We came here to have a mature conversation like adults. Mom is right. The secret is out, and keeping it hidden is just tearing us apart. We want to find a way forward. A way forward, I repeated. I felt the sharp edges of the manila folder pressing against my ribcage. I could have thrown the mortgage documents on the table right then. I could have announced that Terrence was facing federal prison for notary fraud. But my analytical brain kicked in, slamming the brakes on my anger. You never reveal your hand when the enemy changes the rules of engagement. I needed to know exactly what they were planning. I needed to see how deep their delusion ran. Beverly clasped her hands together in front of her chest, smiling serenely. Kendra, you are a smart girl. You have always been so focused on your career, and we are all so proud of how much money you bring into this household. But Jamal is a traditional man. He needs certain things. He needs a legacy. Jada gave him his firstborn son. She gave him the heir he prayed for before you were finally able to have the twins. The room spun slightly, but I planted my feet firmly into the floorboards. She was weaponizing my past fertility struggles to justify my husband's infidelity. Jada smoothed her hand over the leather of my sofa and smiled. Jamal and I have a special bond, Kendra. She said, her voice dripping with unearned arrogance. My son needs his father around more. We are not trying to push you out of the picture. We just need you to be reasonable and share the resources. There is plenty of money to go around. We are not asking you to like it. Beverly continued, taking a step closer to me. We are asking you to accept it with grace. This is a blended reality now. Jamal loves you and he loves Jada. You provide the financial stability this family needs, and Jada provides the traditional support Jamal requires to run his business. We are a prominent family in our church community, Kendra. We have an image to uphold. I will not have my son dragged through a messy public divorce court because you want to be stubborn and prideful. I looked at Terrence. The licensed real estate broker who forged my signature was sitting quietly, letting his mother demand that I share my husband. Terrence, you are awfully quiet, I said. Do you agree with this blended reality? Terrence shrugged, not bothering to look up from his phone. It is what it is, Kendra. Jamal made a mistake, but the kid is here now. You make too much money to blow up your life over pride. Just play ball and keep the family together. I turned my attention back to Beverly. So let me make sure I understand your proposal. You want me to stay married to your son, pay the mortgage on this house, fund his failing tech company, and pretend everything is fine while he plays house with the woman sitting on my furniture. And you want me to do all of this so you do not have to explain your son's adultery to the pastor at your Sunday service. It is about family preservation, Kendra Beverly corrected sharply, her sweet tone evaporating. You need to accept your place. You are the working wife. You are the provider. That is your role. Jada is the mother of his eldest child. That is her role. You need to support this child and welcome Jada into our family structure. If you try to fight this, you will be the one who looks bitter and hateful. We will simply tell the congregation that your demanding career made you neglect your duties at home, and Jamal had to find comfort elsewhere. They had rehearsed this. They had sat around a table, probably eating groceries I paid for, and decided that the best way to handle my discovery was to bully me into submission. They thought my reputation at the wealth management firm and my fear of public embarrassment would force me to accept a sister wife. They thought I was a predictable, compliant asset. I looked at the manila folder under my arm. The tactical advantage of dropping the fraud documents suddenly felt incredibly risky. I was outnumbered in my own home by people who had already proven they were willing to commit federal crimes to extract my wealth. If I threatened them with prison time right now with no legal counsel present and my twins sleeping upstairs, they might escalate from financial abuse to something far more dangerous. I realized with crystal clarity that I was standing in a room full of predators. I could not fight them head-on tonight. I had to pivot. I kept my face entirely impassive. In my line of work, the first person to show emotion loses the negotiation. I let the silence stretch, forcing them to sit in the heavy, uncomfortable weight of their own demands. My lack of tears seemed to confuse Jamal, but it only emboldened Jada. Jada uncrossed her legs, leaning forward on the Italian leather sofa she had not paid a single cent for. "Look, Kendra," she said, using a tone of fake sympathy that made my blood run cold. "I know this is hard for you to swallow, but my son is Jamal's firstborn. He carries the actual legacy. Your twins are sweet, but my boy is the eldest. Jamal needs a son who looks up to him, a home where he can actually be the head of the household. He tells me how exhausting it is living with a woman who constantly emasculates him with spreadsheets and bank accounts. I let him be a man." Jamal had the audacity to nod, puffing his chest out slightly. He was absolutely reveling in two women allegedly fighting over him, completely blind to the fact that I was not fighting for him at all. I was evaluating how quickly I could legally separate his financial ruin from my net worth. Beverly stepped right back into the center of the room, playing the grand mediator. "Now that we understand each other," Beverly announced, "we need to talk about logistics. The apartment Jada is renting right now is simply not suitable for a growing boy. He needs a yard, he needs space to run, and since we are functioning as one blended family. Now it is only fair that we elevate his living situation." Beverly smiled at me, a sharp, predatory grin. "Your year-end bonus is coming up next month, Kendra. You usually clear about $300,000 after taxes, correct? We think it would be a beautiful gesture of unity if you use those funds to put a down payment on a 4-bedroom house for Jada in the Oak Ridge School District. It is the Christian thing to do. We cannot have Jamal's eldest child living in an apartment while your twins live in a gated estate. God commands us to share our blessings." I stared at the woman who birthed my husband. They were not just asking me to tolerate a mistress. They were institutionalizing my financial abuse. They wanted to tax my career to subsidize a shadow family. I felt the sharp edge of the manila folder digging into my ribs. The documents inside proving Terrence and Jamal forged my signature on a $250,000 secondary mortgage felt like a ticking bomb. I looked at the three adults sitting in my living room. Terrence was still scrolling on his phone, casually complicit in federal fraud. Jamal was standing tall, feeling untouchable because his mother was fighting his battles. Beverly was waiting for me to write a check. If I dropped the mortgage fraud documents right now, I would corner them. Cornered animals bite. I was one woman in a room with a desperate fraudster, a corrupt notary, an entitled mistress, and a matriarch who would do anything to protect her church image. If they realized I was sending them to federal prison, they might not let me walk up those stairs to my sleeping children. I had to play the game. I had to swallow my pride, put on the mask of a defeated, desperate wife, and give them exactly what they wanted to hear. I needed them comfortable and unsuspecting while I dismantled their lives from the safety of a distance. I took a slow, deep breath, forcing my shoulders to slump slightly. I engineered a look of absolute devastation onto my face. I opened my mouth to deliver my fake surrender, prepared to tell Beverly that I would prey on her proposal. Before a single word left my lips, the heavy front door flew open. It hit the wall so hard, the framed mirror in the foyer rattled against the drywall. Sharp, rapid footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. Chloe marched directly into the living room, her hair messy, her eyes burning with an intense, chaotic energy. She was still wearing the same dress from the country club, but she had traded her wine glass for a thick, disorganized stack of papers. She had not been invited to this family ambush, but she had clearly found out about it. "Nobody is buying anyone a house," Chloe announced, her voice slicing through the thick tension of the living room like a blade. Terrence finally looked up from his phone, his eyes widening in panic. "Chloe, what are you doing here? Get back in the car. This is family business. I am family." Chloe snapped right back, marching straight toward the center of the room. "And I am sick to death of watching all of you bleed this woman dry so you can pretend to be royalty." Terrence shot up from his armchair so fast it scraped harshly against the hardwood. He lunged toward his wife, his face contorted with a panicked fury I had never seen from him before. He grabbed Chloe by the upper arm, his fingers digging into her skin. "Keep your mouth shut, Chloe," he hissed, trying to physically drag her back toward the foyer. "You are embarrassing yourself. Get in the car before I make you. Chloe did not flinch. She yanked her arm out of his grasp with a violent jerk, stepping out of his reach and planting herself firmly between the coffee table and the fireplace. She held up the disorganized stack of papers, waving them like a loaded weapon. Do not ever touch me again, Terrence. Chloe said, her voice shaking with adrenaline, but completely devoid of fear. I am done covering for you. I am done sitting at holiday dinners watching this entire family smile in Kendra's face while you all pick her pockets. Chloe turned her sharp gaze directly to me. You think you are just paying for a mistress and a preschool, Kendra? You have no idea how deep this goes. Ask your quiet, supportive brother-in-law about the shell companies. Ask him how he uses his real estate license to set up anonymous LLCs in Delaware so Jamal can funnel his venture capital money out of his failing startup and hide it where you can never find it in a divorce. The air left my lungs. The forged second mortgage was not an isolated incident. It was just one piece of a massive, highly coordinated financial extraction operation. Terrence was not just a corrupt notary. He was the chief financial launderer for Jamal's exit strategy. That is a lie, Terrence shouted, stepping toward Chloe again, his fists clenched at his sides. She is making things up because she is mad about our personal finances. Chloe ignored him entirely. She slapped the first stack of papers down onto the glass coffee table right in front of Jada. Then she turned her attention to Beverly, who was standing by the fireplace, looking like she had just swallowed broken glass. And you? Beverly Chloe continued, her voice dripping with absolute disgust. Playing the holy matriarch, sitting in the front pew every Sunday, judging the rest of us for not being godly enough. Did you tell the pastor that your platinum tithing status is funded by stolen money? Beverly gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. How dare you speak to me that way in my son's house? Chloe threw the remaining papers directly at Beverly's feet. The printed pages scattered across the Persian rug. I could clearly see the logos of Beverly's megachurch printed at the top of the donation receipts, thousands of dollars in charitable contributions. Those are your church donation receipts, Beverly Chloe said. I found them in Terrence's home office. Every single dollar you tithe comes directly from the joint account you share with Jamal, the same account Kendra funds with her corporate bonuses. You are buying your way into heaven using your daughter-in-law's paycheck while you actively hide your son's mistress. You are the biggest hypocrite I have ever met. Beverly's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The pristine image she guarded so fiercely had just been dragged through the mud and exposed for exactly what it was. Chloe looked directly at me. The pale sister-in-law, who always sat quietly in the corner sipping wine and observing our toxic family dynamics, had finally set the entire house on fire. Her eyes met mine, filled with a stark, urgent warning. Run, Kendra. Chloe said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. Run far away and take your twins. They will never stop taking from you. They will bleed you dry and convince you it is your own fault. Run. Without waiting for a response, Chloe turned on her heel and marched out of the living room. The heavy front door slammed shut behind her, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Terrence stood frozen, staring at the scattered church receipts on the floor. Beverly looked like she was going to be physically sick. Jada sat stiffly on the sofa, clutching her teacup, her arrogant smirk completely wiped away. But Jamal did not freeze. He went on the offensive. He stepped around this coffee table, moving slowly and deliberately until he was standing just inches away from me. He used his height to tower over me, boxing me in against the back of the sofa. The charismatic tech founder mask was completely gone. The man staring down at me was cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. Do not let my crazy sister-in-law put ideas in your head, Kendra. Jamal said, his voice dropping into a menacing whisper meant only for me. You think you can just pack up and leave? You think you can divorce me and take my kids? I kept my chin level, refusing to look away or show an ounce of the fear spiking through my veins. I do not need ideas from Chloe, I replied evenly. I have all the data I need. Jamal leaned closer, his breath hot against my face. If you file for divorce, I will destroy you. I will hire the most aggressive litigation firm in Atlanta. I will drag the proceedings out for years. I will tie up every single asset you think you own in endless discovery motions until you are drowning in legal fees. I will bleed your accounts completely dry before a judge ever strikes the gavel. He grabbed my upper arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. And the twins? He continued, a cruel smile twisting his lips. You work 80 hours a week, Kendra. You are on client calls at 6 in the morning and reviewing portfolios until midnight. Who do you think a judge is going to give primary custody to? The mother who is never home because she is obsessed with her career, or the father who runs his business straight from the living room? The threat hit me like a physical blow to the chest. He was weaponizing my career against me. The very career that kept a roof over his head and funded his secret life was going to be used as evidence that I was an unfit absentee mother. He was right. Family courts are notoriously biased against highly demanding maternal careers. If he played the role of the present hands-on entrepreneur father and framed me as a workaholic who prioritized money over her children, he could actually win custody. I will paint you as an unstable, overworked corporate drone. Jamal whispered, his grip tightening on my arm. I will take Malik and Maya. I will take the house. And Jada will raise your children while you pay me alimony for the rest of your life. Do you understand me? I stared into the eyes of the man I had vowed to build a life with. There was no love left in him. There was only greed and control. If I dropped the forged mortgage documents now, if I declared war tonight, he would immediately execute his threat. He would freeze the assets file for emergency custody and trap me in a legal nightmare that could cost me my children. I realized with absolute certainty that Chloe was right. I had to run, but I could not just pack a bag and flee. I had to be strategic. I had to dismantle his entire financial and legal infrastructure before he even knew we were at war. I had to make him believe he had won. I forced my muscles to relax. I let out a shaky breath, widening my eyes to manufacture a look of pure defeated panic. I looked away from him, staring down at the floor, as if the weight of his threats had completely crushed my spirit. Okay, I whispered, letting my voice tremble just enough to be convincing. Okay, Jamal. Please just let go of my arm. You are hurting me. Jamal smiled, a dark, victorious grin. He released my arm and took a step back, adjusting his cuffs. He thought he had broken me. He had no idea he had just given me the exact blueprint I needed to destroy him. I let my knees buckle just enough to sell the performance. I sank onto the edge of the Italian leather sofa right next to where Jada was still sitting. I buried my face in my hands and forced myself to think about the absolute worst-case scenario. I thought about a judge taking Malik and Maya away from me. I thought about Jamal raising my babies in a house I paid for with this mistress playing stepmother. The sheer terror of that thought produced real hot tears. I let a ragged sob tear from my throat. My shoulders shook violently. To the predators in my living room, I looked like a woman whose spirit had just been snapped in half. Jamal let out a loud breath of relief, adjusting his suit jacket. He looked down at me with a sickening mixture of pity and triumph. Beverly wasted no time stepping back into her role as the righteous matriarch. She walked over and placed her hands heavily on my shaking shoulders. Her signature floral perfume suddenly smelled suffocating and cheap. There now, Beverly cooed, her voice returning to that sickeningly sweet pitch. I know this is a heavy cross to bear, Kendra, but the Lord does not give us more than we can handle. We are going to pray on it. We are going to ask for guidance and peace for this family, so we can all move forward in unity. I nodded slowly, lifting my tear-stained face. I looked into her eyes and delivered the performance of my life. Okay, I whispered, my voice deliberately hoarse. I just want to keep my family together. Tell me what I need to do. Beverly beamed. She actually grabbed my hand and then reached out with her other hand to grab Jada. She forced the three of us to form a prayer circle right there in my living room. Jamal and Terrence bowed their heads. Beverly launched into a 5-minute prayer asking for grace, understanding, and a spirit of submission for the wives. I closed my eyes and let her squeeze my fingers. I bowed my head obediently, but I was not praying for submission. I was calculating exactly how many days it would take to liquidate my restricted stock units without triggering a massive tax penalty. When the prayer ended, Terrence practically ran for the front door, eager to escape the mess his wife Chloe had made. Jada stood up, smoothing her designer jeans, and gave me a condescending smile before Jamal escorted her and his mother to their cars. When Jamal came back inside, he tried to wrap his arms around me, pulling me against his chest. He kissed the top of my head, murmuring about how much he loved me and how this new arrangement would bring us closer. I stood perfectly still, letting him hold me, letting him believe he had completely conquered the brilliant wealth manager he had always secretly resented. Ego is a dangerous drug, and my husband and his mother were addicted to it. They took my manufactured breakdown as an absolute green light to accelerate their twisted fantasy. They honestly believed they had broken me so thoroughly that I would just fall in line and fund their delusions indefinitely. Within 48 hours, Beverly initiated the next phase of their plan. She hosted a private Sunday dinner at our home and insisted both Jamal and I attend. When we arrived, Jada was already there, sitting at the formal dining room table feeding her toddler. I played my part flawlessly. I wore a plain beige sweater instead of my usual tailored blazers. I kept my makeup minimal. I spoke only when spoken to and kept my voice soft and deferential. I sat across the table from my husband's mistress and ate dry pot roast while Beverly praised Jamal for being such a strong provider. Jamal sat at the head of the table, absolutely glowing. He was living out some toxic patriarchal fantasy surrounded by his mother, who worshipped him, a mistress who stroked his ego, and a high-earning wife who sat silently funding the entire operation. Over the next 2 weeks, they paraded Jada around at 3 more private family gatherings. Terrence was there acting as if he had not forged my signature on a $250,000 mortgage. Jamal would casually bounce between sitting with me and checking on Jada, playing the benevolent king holding court. He would proudly hand his premium credit card to Jada so she could order expensive wine with dinner while I drank tap water. He felt so incredibly powerful. But while they were busy celebrating their victory, I was conducting a silent, ruthless reconnaissance mission. Sitting quietly at those dinner tables gave me unrestricted access to their schedules, their habits, and their vulnerabilities. I listened as Jamal bragged about his upcoming investor meetings, mapping out exactly when he would be out of the house. I watched Beverly casually mention her upcoming church retreats, knowing exactly when she would be distracted. I observed Jada demanding more luxury items, piecing together exactly what kind of lifestyle she expected Jamal to maintain. They thought my silence was the silence of a defeated woman. They did not realize it was the silence of a predator studying its prey. They were so intoxicated by their own perceived power that they never stopped to wonder why a woman who manages complex financial portfolios for a living would surrender without reviewing a single legal contract. They blinded themselves with their own arrogance. They built their perfect blended family on a foundation of my stolen wealth, and they felt entirely too comfortable spending money that was about to vanish. They had no idea I was smiling politely across the dinner table while mentally drafting the financial execution that would leave them all with absolutely nothing. The facade ended the moment I stepped out of the elevator and into my corner office on the 42nd floor. While Jamal and Beverly were busy picking out custom drapes for Jada's imagined new house, I was staring at a bank of 6 high-definition monitors, preparing to initiate a financial bloodbath. As a senior wealth manager, my job is to protect assets from market volatility, hostile takeovers, and legal liabilities. Divorce is just another hostile takeover. I knew exactly how family court worked in Georgia. If I filed for divorce while my assets were sitting in domestic accounts, a judge would immediately issue a standing order, freezing everything. Jamal would hire an aggressive attorney and argue that he was entitled to half of my liquid wealth to maintain his lifestyle and fund his hollow tech startup. I was not going to let him touch a single penny. I started the execution with my personal stock portfolios. Over the last 7 years, I had accumulated a massive amount of restricted stock units and blue-chip investments. I executed a series of staggered sell orders, carefully structuring the liquidations to avoid triggering automated flagging systems at the major brokerages. The capital gains taxes would be brutal next year, but I considered it the standard cost of my freedom. I watched the numbers on my screens fluctuate as I converted millions of dollars in equities into raw, liquid cash. I sat in my ergonomic chair sipping black coffee while the wealth I had built through years of 80-hour work weeks transformed into untraceable mobility. But cash sitting in an American bank is vulnerable. I picked up my secure office line and contacted a specialist attorney I had worked with on international corporate mergers. Within 48 hours, I established a series of irrevocable offshore trusts in jurisdictions that do not recognize domestic civil judgments. I named my twins Malik and Maya as the sole beneficiaries, with myself acting as the primary trustee. I initiated the wire transfers in rapid succession. I watched the progress bars on my monitors fill up as 7 figures of my hard-earned wealth vanished across international borders, becoming legally untouchable by any family court judge or greedy husband. Next came the accounts I legally controlled closer to home. I completely drained my personal savings, my emergency funds, and the high-yield accounts Jamal thought were securely funding our future empire. I redirected my direct deposit. My firm was scheduled to pay out my massive year-end bonus in exactly 9 days. Beverly was expecting me to use that exact bonus to buy Jada a 4-bedroom house in a premium school district. Instead, I routed the entire $300,000 payout directly into the offshore trust. When that deposit hit, my domestic accounts would show a balance close to zero. I systematically severed every financial artery that fed Jamal's fragile ecosystem. But moving my own money was only the first half of my strategy. The second half was weaponizing the debt Jamal had illegally created. I pulled up the digitized file of the forged second mortgage on our Lake Oconee vacation home. $250,000 of stolen equity, bearing my forged signature and Terrence's corrupt notary stamp. My initial instinct the night I discovered it had been to freeze the property and report the fraud immediately. But my analytical brain saw the superior tactical advantage of doing absolutely nothing. The monthly payment on that fraudulent second mortgage was massive, and the lender was a predatory online bank that aggressively pursued defaults. For the past 14 months, Jamal had been making those payments using the backdoor corporate account, funded entirely by my salary transfers. By completely cutting his access to my income, I was choking off the financial oxygen to his entire operation. Jamal's startup generated zero actual revenue. He spent his days giving interviews and attending networking lunches, relying entirely on my capital to keep the lights on. Without my money to cover the fraudulent loan, he would inevitably miss a payment. And then he would miss another. The moment that loan went into default, the bank would initiate foreclosure proceedings and launch a rigorous financial audit to recover their $250,000. They would scrutinize the origination documents. They would scrutinize the signatures. They would scrutinize the notary who certified the transaction. I did not need to hire an expensive litigation attorney to expose Terrence and Jamal. The bank's own aggressive fraud department would do the heavy lifting for me. I was deliberately leaving the forged mortgage fully intact, setting it up as a financial landmine that would detonate the second Jamal ran out of cash. I closed the mortgage file and smiled at the blank screen. My husband and his mother thought they had secured a passive, obedient provider to fund their blended family delusion. They thought my tears in the living room meant they had won. They had no idea they were sitting in a house of cards, and I had just quietly removed every single foundational pillar. I packed up my briefcase and turned off the lights in my office. My financial armor was completely secured. My children's inheritance was safely locked behind international borders waiting for us to claim it. Now it was just a matter of letting the clock run out. The trap was set perfectly. Jamal's fake empire was already dead, it just did not know it yet, and Jada was about to walk right into the final phase of my vanishing act. I was standing in the center of the first-floor playroom, quietly packing a single box of my twins' favorite books when I heard the distinct click of high heels echoing through my foyer. I had not given anyone a key. Jamal must have handed her a spare, completely disregarding whatever boundaries he pretended still existed. Jada strolled into my home as if her name was permanently etched onto the deed. She was wearing another pair of designer jeans purchased with my diverted income and carrying a metal tape measure. She did not knock. She did not announce herself. She walked through my living room and found me standing among the primary colored bins and educational toys belonging to Malik and Maya. She leaned against the doorframe of the playroom, crossing her arms over her chest, with a smug, entitled smirk playing across her lips. "Beverly said you were finally being agreeable," Jada said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, but I needed to see it for myself. "Jamal is at the office pitching investors, so I figured I would come take some measurements." I placed a hardcover book into the cardboard box and stood up slowly. I kept my face perfectly neutral. Measurements for what exactly, I asked. "For my son," Jada replied, stepping into the room and looking around with absolute disdain. She kicked a stray wooden building block out of her path. "This room gets the best morning light, and it is on the main floor. My boy is a toddler and stairs are dangerous for him. Since he is Jamal's firstborn, he deserves the best space in the house. Your twins can share a room upstairs. I expect you to have all this junk cleared out by Saturday. Jamal is having a custom bedroom set delivered, and I do not want any of your kids' things cluttering up his space." I looked at the woman standing in my house, attempting to assert dominance over a room she could not afford to heat. Jada was playing a localized game of checkers while I was executing global thermonuclear chess. She actually believed she was winning. She thought because Beverly gave her permission to enter my home and Jamal gave her a spare key that she had successfully conquered my territory. She was so desperate to claim the title of the primary woman that she could not see she was fighting for the captain's chair on a rapidly sinking ship. Jada mistook my silence for hesitation. She unclipped the tape measure and let the metal strip extend with a loud, sharp snap. "Do not look at me like that, Kendra," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Beverly already told you how this blended family operates. I am the mother of the eldest child. That makes me the priority. You are just the provider. So do your job and clear this room. If you try to make this difficult, I will just call Jamal and have him move your kids' things out to the garage himself. He does whatever I tell him to do anyway." She was intentionally trying to provoke a reaction. She wanted me to scream. She wanted me to cry and beg her to leave my children's sanctuary alone. She wanted to run back to Jamal and Beverly with a dramatic story about how unstable and hostile I was proving to them, that I was the villain preventing their perfect family unity. I looked at her designer shoes standing on my pristine hardwood floors. I thought about the offshore trusts I had just fully funded the previous afternoon. I thought about the zero balance in my domestic checking accounts. I thought about the forged secondary mortgage sitting untouched, waiting to default the second Jamal realized his cash flow was entirely severed. Jada was measuring the walls for custom curtains in a house that was about to be seized by a predatory online bank. I let out a soft, relaxed breath and smiled. It was not a tight, forced smile. It was a genuine, serene expression of absolute liberation. "You know what, Jada?" I said, keeping my voice warm and incredibly calm. "You are absolutely right." Jada faltered. The tape measure retracted back into its casing with a quick zip. Her brow furrowed in confusion. She had prepared for a vicious screaming match, and my total compliance caught her completely off guard. "You are right," I continued, taking a step back and sweeping my arm across the room in an expansive, welcoming gesture. "This room does get the best morning light. Your son should have it. In fact, you do not need to wait until Saturday to start moving your things in. You can take the playroom today." Jada blinked, staring at me suspiciously. "You are just going to empty it." "I am going to do much more than that," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I want you to feel completely comfortable here. Take the playroom, take the living room, take the custom Italian leather sofa you love sitting on. In fact, Jada, you can have the whole house." Her arrogant smirk slowly returned, stretching across her face as she misinterpreted my words. She puffed out her chest, her posture radiating triumphant vindication. She honestly believed she had broken my spirit so thoroughly that I was yielding my entire home to her out of sheer submission to her status as the mother of the firstborn. "Well," Jada said, flipping her hair over her shoulder, I am glad you finally understand your place in this family, Kendra. Beverly said you were stubborn, but I knew you would eventually fall in line. Jamal belongs with me. This house belongs to us now. Do not worry, I will make sure your twins have a nice little corner upstairs out of our way. She turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the floorboards as she marched out of the playroom. She practically floated toward the front door, eager to call Jamal and Beverly to brag about how she had effortlessly evicted my children from their own space and forced the high-powered wealth manager to bow down to her. The heavy front door clicked shut. I stood in the quiet playroom and looked at the single cardboard box I had packed. I was not clearing out the toys to make room for her son. I was packing the sentimental items I refused to leave behind. Jada thought she had just claimed a multi-million-dollar estate. She had no idea she had just proudly claimed ownership of a financial crime scene. In exactly 48 hours, I was pulling my children out of school and disappearing into thin air. Let her measure the windows. Let her order the expensive bedroom set on Jamal's credit card. They could have the house, the furniture, and the illusion of a perfect blended family. They were about to inherit nothing but catastrophic debt and a federal fraud investigation. I needed 72 hours of completely uninterrupted time to execute the final phase of my extraction. I could not have Jamal popping in between investor meetings, and I certainly could not risk Beverly or Jada dropping by unannounced to measure more curtains. I needed them out of the house, out of the city, and completely out of my way. The absolute easiest way to manipulate narcissists is to feed their egos. So I picked up my phone and called my husband. When Jamal answered, I pitched my voice soft and hesitant, layering in exactly the right amount of manufactured guilt. I told him I had spent the afternoon reflecting on Beverly's prayer circle and Jada's visit to the playroom. I told him I realized I had been selfish and rigid, too focused on my career to understand his needs as a traditional man. I could practically hear him swelling with pride through the receiver. He eagerly accepted my apology, ready to step back into the role of the benevolent patriarch forgiving his difficult wife. Then I offered the peace offering. I suggested he take his mother and Jada to Miami for a long weekend. I framed it as a necessary bonding trip for their new blended reality. I told him I needed the weekend alone to clear out the twins' playroom, organize the house for Jada's arrival, and mentally prepare myself for our new family structure. I insisted they stay at an exclusive 5-star resort in South Beach. Jamal did not even hesitate. The prospect of parading his mistress around Miami on a luxury vacation while his high-earning wife stayed home to pack boxes was too intoxicating for him to refuse. I handled the reservations myself, ensuring every detail was perfectly tracked. I booked 3 first-class tickets on a Thursday morning flight out of Hartsfield-Jackson. I reserved a 2-bedroom penthouse suite overlooking the ocean and prepaid the deposit for a VIP poolside cabana. But I did not use my own corporate card. I used the high-limit American Express tied directly to Jamal's business holding account, the same account I was currently draining to zero. By Wednesday evening, Jamal was packing his designer luggage, humming happily in our master closet. He kissed me on the forehead before he went to sleep, completely convinced he had engineered the perfect life. He had his brilliant wealth manager wife securing his finances at home, and his mistress ready to play on the white sands of Florida. Thursday morning arrived with crisp precision. Jamal kissed the twins goodbye before they caught the school bus, completely unaware it would be the last time he would ever see them in this house. He grabbed his bags and kissed me on the cheek. "Take your time with the playroom, babe," he said, flashing that pitch-perfect startup founder smile. "We will be back late Sunday. Let me know if you need any help lifting the heavy bins." I watched his luxury SUV pull out of the driveway, heading toward the airport to pick up Beverly and Jada. I walked straight to my home office and pulled up the airline's live tracking portal on my left monitor. I watched the digital flight status shift from boarding to final call. I pictured the 3 of them settling into their oversized first-class leather seats, sipping complimentary pre-flight champagne. Beverly was probably bragging to the flight attendant about her successful son. Jada was undoubtedly taking selfies with the diamond tennis necklace my bonus had paid for. Jamal was sitting between them, the absolute master of his universe. The digital status updated on my screen. Flight in air. The heavy cabin doors were sealed. Phones were switched to airplane mode. They were trapped in a metal tube 30,000 feet in the sky, with absolutely no way to communicate with the outside world for the next 2 hours. I picked up my secure office line and dialed the Platinum Concierge desk for American Express. I did not just cancel the cards. I invoked my status as the primary financial officer on the corporate account and reported severe fraudulent activity. I flagged the Miami resort charges, the first-class flights, and the cabana deposits as unauthorized expenditures resulting from a compromised corporate ledger. The representative immediately froze the entire account, nullifying the authorized user cards held by Jamal and Beverly. The physical plastic sitting in their designer wallets was now completely worthless. They were flying toward a luxury resort with absolutely no way to pay for it. But stranding them in Florida was just a logistical maneuver to buy me time. The real execution was happening on my right monitor. I opened the encrypted dossier I had compiled over the past 3 years. Jamal loved to complain that I audited his startup and almost ruined his funding. He was wrong. I saved him from federal prison 3 years ago by legally restructuring his negligent bookkeeping. Today, I was tearing that protection down. I compiled the raw, unedited financial data from his tech company. I attached the records showing how Terrence had used his real estate license to set up anonymous shell companies in Delaware. I included the ledgers proving Jamal had been commingling corporate investor funds with personal expenses, classifying luxury vacations, tailored suits, and a $250,000 secondary mortgage as business development outreach. He had been lying to his angel investors, and he had been lying to the federal government. I logged into the official portal for the Internal Revenue Service whistleblower office. As a licensed financial professional providing irrefutable documentary evidence of corporate tax evasion and wire fraud, my submission carried immediate institutional weight. I uploaded the spreadsheets, the forged mortgage application, Terrence's corrupt notary logs, and the routing numbers for the hidden credit union account Beverly used to launder the money. I hit submit. The confirmation screen blinked back at me, verifying that the data had been securely received by federal investigators. My husband was currently flying south, believing he was the king of Atlanta. He had no idea he was landing as a broke, federally flagged fraudster with a frozen credit card and a mistress who was about to realize her meal ticket just bounced. I checked my watch. I had exactly 46 hours left to pack up my children and vanish. I did not call a standard moving company with a brightly colored truck and a crew of loud workers. I hired a boutique private relocation firm that specializes in high-net-worth divorces and corporate extractions. They operate with absolute discretion and require strict non-disclosure agreements. A sleek, unmarked box truck backed into my driveway exactly 40 minutes after Jamal's flight took off. The crew of 4 professionals worked in total silence, wearing shoe covers to protect the hardwood floors. I directed them straight to the second level. The goal was not to strip the house bare. The goal was surgical removal. I instructed the crew to pack Malik and Maya's entire bedrooms. Every dinosaur blanket, every stuffed bear, every piece of clothing, and every favorite bedtime book was carefully boxed and loaded. I wanted my children surrounded by the comfort of their own things when they woke up in our new home. I watched the playroom downstairs get emptied of everything that mattered. This was the very room Jada had arrogantly claimed just days prior. I left behind only the heavy wooden toy bins and the bare shelving units. Let her fill it with whatever she could afford on zero credit. Then I moved to the master suite. I left the expensive king-sized bed, the custom linens, and the heavy oak dressers. I walked into the massive walk-in closet I had shared with Jamal for 7 years. I took my tailored suits, my designer shoes, and the luxury handbags I had purchased with my own bonuses. I left every single item Jamal owned exactly where it was. His perfectly pressed white shirts, his collection of imported watches, his expensive colognes. The visual contrast was stunning. His side of the closet remained a monument to his vanity, while my side was stripped down to the bare drywall. I systematically erased my physical footprint from the space we had built together. I left no stray hairs, no forgotten sweaters, no lingering traces of my perfume. Downstairs in my home office, I packed the heavy fireproof safe containing the twins' birth certificates, their passports, my legal identification, and the hardware wallet securing the offshore trust access keys. The movers loaded my dual monitors and my desktop tower, leaving behind only a blank mahogany desk. I unhooked the smart home routers and wiped the local hard drives associated with the interior security cameras. Jamal would not be able to log into the house from his phone in Miami to check on his property. As far as his digital network was concerned, the house had simply gone dark. By Thursday evening, the truck was fully loaded. I signed the final release forms and watched the unmarked vehicle pull out of the neighborhood, beginning its long journey to a highly secure gated estate, in a state Jamal would never think to look. Friday morning was dedicated to staging the theater. I sent Malik and Maya to their public school for the absolute last time, acting as if it were a perfectly normal day. When I returned to the empty house, I hired a premium cleaning service to do a deep, pristine scrub of the entire first floor. I wanted the house to look immaculate. I wanted it to look like a glossy real estate brochure. When they finished, the hardwood floors gleamed, the stainless steel appliances sparkled, and the air smelled of fresh citrus. It was a beautiful, flawless, empty shell. It looked exactly like my husband. I walked into the kitchen and stood at the marble island. This was the exact spot where Jamal had yelled at me defending his fraudulent math. It was the spot where Beverly had staged her ridiculous prayer circle to force my submission. It was the spot where Chloe had dropped the match that burned this fake family to the ground. I reached into my leather tote bag and pulled out the thick, crisp manila folder I had assembled during my midnight audit. I placed it perfectly in the center of the cold stone. I opened it one last time to ensure the presentation was absolutely flawless. On the left side of the open folder, I fanned out the American Express receipts. I highlighted the $22,000 for Jada's diamond tennis necklace. Right beneath it, I placed the booking confirmations for the luxury Miami resort fees that were currently bouncing across the banking networks in South Florida. I made sure the dates and times were highly visible. On the right side of the folder, I placed the heavy printed copies of the secondary mortgage on our lake house. $250,000 of stolen equity extracted from a property I had paid for in cash. Right on top of the mortgage application, I placed a magnified high-resolution printout of the final signature page. The clumsy forgery of my name sat right next to the undeniable black ink of Terrence's official state notary stamp. It was the irrefutable proof of federal fraud neatly packaged for their viewing pleasure. I did not write an angry letter. I did not leave a tearful goodbye note explaining how much they broke my heart. I did not ask why I was not enough for him, or how Beverly could betray me after everything I had done for their church image. Emotions are a liability in a clean extraction. Wealth managers do not leave emotional diatribes, we leave audits. I closed the manila folder, aligning its edges perfectly parallel with the grooves of the marble island. It rested alone on the vast expanse of the counter, a quiet, unexploded bomb waiting for Jamal to turn the key in the front door. The house was completely silent. My financial extraction was entirely complete. My physical extraction was the only thing remaining. I turned my back on the kitchen, picked up my leather tote bag, and walked out the front door to pick up my twins. I walked through the glass double doors of the elementary school, just as the final bell echoed loudly down the tiled hallway. Malik and Maya came bursting out of their kindergarten classroom with their backpacks bouncing unevenly against their shoulders. They had bright blue finger paint smeared across their hands and crumpled construction paper projects clutched tightly in their small fists. I knelt down to their eye level and pulled them both into a fierce, tight embrace. They smelled of wax crayons and playground dirt. I smiled brightly and told them we were going on a highly secret surprise vacation, just the three of us. Their eyes widened with pure, unfiltered childhood joy. They cheered and grabbed my hands. They did not ask where their father was. Jamal had conditioned his own children to accept his chronic absence on a regular basis. He was always too busy chasing angel investors or taking fake business meetings to show up for afternoon school pickups. His consistent neglect made my physical extraction completely seamless. We walked out of the school and completely bypassed the crowded visitor parking lot, filled with idling minivans and chatting parents. I guided my twins down the street to the corner, where a sleek black town car was waiting quietly at the curb. The driver stepped out instantly, opening the heavy tinted doors for us with professional efficiency. I had hired a premium private transport service using a newly formed corporate entity. I wanted absolutely zero digital footprint tied to my personal vehicle or my standard transportation accounts. My personal SUV was currently parked securely in a long-term storage facility across the city, paid upfront in cash for the next 12 months. We slid into the plush leather seats. I buckled Malik and Maya securely into the back row and settled in beside them. The driver did not ask any questions or attempt to make small talk. He merged smoothly into the late afternoon Atlanta traffic, heading steadily away from the entire life I had just ruthlessly dismantled. As the familiar city skyline passed by the dark-tinted windows, I reached into my leather designer tote bag. I pulled out my primary cell phone. The screen was already flooded with unread notifications. Work emails, calendar alerts, and automated institutional bank updates glowed brightly. There were absolutely zero messages from Jamal or Beverly. They were still completely absorbed in their fabricated Miami fantasy, entirely too busy enjoying the luxury beach resort to check on the working wife who was supposedly at home packing boxes. I felt a cold sense of satisfaction. I took a sharp metal paperclip from the zipper pocket of my wallet and pushed the thin wire into the tiny pinhole on the side of the device. The tray popped open with a tiny click. I removed the microchip, holding my entire digital connection to the family I was actively leaving behind. I snapped the fragile plastic square sharply in half between my fingernails. I rolled the car window down exactly 2 inches and let the broken pieces slip out into the rushing wind. I dropped the dead device back into my bag. My corporate wealth management team already had my new encrypted communication channels. My husband and his mother had absolutely nothing. The leash was officially severed. The town car bypassed the chaotic main commercial terminals of the airport and navigated smoothly toward the highly secure private aviation sector. We pulled up directly to a quiet, discreet hangar located far away from the commercial crowds and the endless security lines. A mid-sized charter jet was sitting on the tarmac with its engines whining low and steady. I held my children firmly by their hands as we walked up the metal steps and stepped into the pristine luxury cabin. The flight attendant greeted us warmly, offering the twins organic fruit juice and offering me a glass of sparkling water. I declined any alcohol. I wanted my mind razor sharp for the arrival. I settled into the oversized leather seat and fastened my belt tightly. The jet taxied smoothly down the empty runway and accelerated, pushing me back against the premium upholstery. We lifted off, pulling away from the Georgia soil and leaving my husband's hollow empire completely behind us. While Jamal was checking into a hotel room using a credit card that was destined to decline violently, I was flying privately across the country funded by untouchable wealth. The flight lasted just under 3 hours. We landed at a private airfield in a state Jamal would never even guess to search. He thought I was deeply tethered to the Southern corporate financial network. He never paid enough attention to my investment strategies to realize I had aggressively diversified my real estate holdings out west. A second private vehicle was waiting for us on the dark tarmac. We drove for 40 minutes, ascending into the rolling hills and deep green forests of our new home state. We turned onto a winding private road that led to a massive wrought iron security gate. The gate swung open silently, reading the encrypted digital tag on our transport vehicle. We pulled up to a sprawling, modern architectural estate surrounded by acres of untouchable private land. The security system was absolute military grade. The perimeter was lined with high-definition motion tracking cameras, and the physical doors required biometric access. I carried my sleeping twins inside the beautiful new house and laid them gently onto their custom beds. They were completely safe. They were totally secure. I walked out onto the massive back deck and breathed in the crisp, clean mountain air. The heavy, suffocating weight of my husband and his greedy, deceptive family was permanently gone. I had successfully executed the absolute perfect vanishing act. I sat on the expansive deck of my new mountain estate, wrapped in a cashmere blanket with my encrypted laptop resting on the cedar table in front of me. The crisp morning air was perfectly still, but the digital world on my screen was violently erupting. My customized financial monitoring software chimed with a priority alert. It was a push notification from American Express directly tied to the corporate account I had flagged for fraud. A transaction had just been attempted at a luxury South Beach resort. The merchant code indicated a premium poolside cabana rental. The requested amount was $2,000. The transaction status blinked back at me in bright red letters. Declined. I took a slow sip of my coffee and watched the absolute panic unfold in real time through the raw data. When a man like Jamal gets his card declined in front of his mistress and his mother, he does not gracefully accept defeat. His ego forces him to try again. Less than 60 seconds later, a second alert popped onto my screen. He attempted to split the charge trying to run the card for $1,000. Declined. 5 minutes later, another alert fired. He was at the resort concierge desk attempting to authorize a hold for their penthouse suite incidentals. Declined. I could visualize the scene with absolute clarity. Jamal standing in the polished marble lobby of the five-star Miami hotel, his charismatic smile completely evaporating as the front desk agent politely but firmly asked for another form of payment. Beverly would step in attempting to save her son from the public embarrassment. I watched my second monitor as a query hit the regional credit union routing numbers. Beverly attempted to swipe the debit card linked to the joint account she used to launder my money. Access denied. Account frozen pending federal tax review. The alerts started coming in rapid succession, painting a pathetic picture of their descent. A charge attempt at a mid-tier seafood restaurant for $300. Declined. A swipe at a corner cafe for $80. Declined. A desperate attempt to summon a premium black car service for $50. Declined. They had flown to South Florida wrapped in designer clothes and unearned arrogance, and now they were completely stranded in paradise, with absolutely zero liquidity. Tech founders who live entirely on leveraged credit never carry actual cash. They had no way to pay for a hotel room, no way to buy a meal, and no way to secure transportation back to the airport. The security firewall I placed on my communication channels automatically routed all incoming correspondence to my legal team. My attorney forwarded me the frantic email chain that Jamal had initiated with his brother Terrence. Jamal was begging his older brother to wire him emergency funds so he could get his mistress and his mother out of the Miami humidity. But Terrence was currently fighting his own raging inferno. Chloe had emptied their domestic accounts and served him with divorce papers that very morning. Terrence had absolutely nothing to give. After hours of humiliating negotiation, Terrence managed to scrounge up just enough capital from a high-interest payday loan to buy them 3 tickets back to Atlanta. He did not buy them first-class direct flights. He bought them non-refundable middle seats on a budget discount airline. The King of Atlanta and his royal court were forced to drag their heavy designer luggage down the sweltering Florida pavement to catch a public transit bus to the airport. When their discount flight finally touched down in Georgia, they were exhausted, furious, and completely desperate. They took a cheap rideshare directly to my property, expecting to kick the front door open and demand that I restore their financial access immediately. Jamal walked into that house ready to unleash a tirade about disrespect and wifely obedience. Instead, he unlocked the heavy oak doors and stepped into a sprawling, echoing void. I received the automated perimeter breach notification when Jamal inputted his security code. The interior cameras were wiped, but the audio recorders I legally installed in the main living areas began capturing the entire collapse. Jamal yelled my name, his voice bouncing off the bare drywall of the stripped foyer. He rushed up the curved staircase, his heavy footsteps hammering against the wood. I heard doors swinging open and slamming shut. He found my side of the master closet completely sterilized. He ran into the twins' bedrooms and found them stripped down to the bare carpet. The panic in his voice escalated from angry commands to breathless, frantic confusion. He ran back downstairs to the kitchen, his breathing jagged and heavy. Then everything went dead silent. He had found the kitchen island. He had found the crisp manila folder I left sitting perfectly in the center of the cold marble. I listened to the audio feed as Jamal flipped through the thick stack of documents. The rustle of paper was the only sound in the empty house. He was looking at the American Express statements tracking the diamond necklace. He was looking at the printed confirmation of my submission to the Internal Revenue Service whistleblower office. And finally, he reached the bottom of the folder. He was staring at the forged secondary mortgage documents alongside the undeniable proof of Terrence's corrupt notary stamp. Before Jamal could even process the reality that he was facing federal prison, the landline phone mounted on the kitchen wall began to ring. I had specifically paid the utility bill to keep that single line active for this exact moment. The answering machine clicked on, filling the sterile kitchen with a pre-recorded automated voice. It was the collection department from the predatory online bank. The robotic voice clearly and loudly stated that the $250,000 secondary mortgage on the Lake Oconee property was officially in default due to reversed automated payments. The voice confirmed that aggressive foreclosure proceedings and a mandatory fraud review were commencing immediately. Jamal realized in that exact moment that he was completely naked. I did not just pack my bags and leave him. I systematically stripped him of his financial armor, his legal protection, and his fabricated tech empire. He had nothing left to leverage. But Jamal was not alone in that kitchen. Jada and Beverly were standing right behind him. Jada had listened to the bank collection voicemail echo through the empty room. She looked at the bare walls where my custom furniture used to sit. She looked at the manila folder detailing the massive impending federal fraud charges. The delusion she had been happily swimming in shattered instantly. The audio feed captured the exact second the mistress realized the master was entirely broke. Jada did not offer him comfort or traditional submission. She unleashed a visceral, high-pitched scream that rattled the microphone receivers. "You lied to me!" Jada shrieked, her voice cracking with pure venomous rage. "You told me you were a millionaire. You told me this was your house. You told me you were buying me a custom estate in Oak Ridge. You do not have a dime. Your wife paid for everything. You bought my diamonds with her paycheck." Jamal tried to shush her, his voice trembling as he begged her to lower her voice and let him figure it out. He promised her he had investors lined up and that he could fix the cash flow problem. Jada laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that held absolutely zero respect. "Fix it!" Jada yelled, her footsteps stomping aggressively across the kitchen floor. "You are going to federal prison, you broke loser. You used me to feel like a big man while your wife funded your entire existence. I am not going down with a sinking ship." Beverly attempted to intervene, jumping in to fiercely protect her favorite son. She ordered Jada to show some respect and remember her place in the family. That was the absolute wrong move. Jada turned her pure, unadulterated fury directly onto the matriarch. "Shut your mouth, Beverly!" Jada snapped back without a single ounce of church-going decorum. "You are just as broke and pathetic as he is. You dragged me into this poverty trap and pretended you were royalty. You are a fraud. I am taking my son, and I am leaving right now. And you better believe I am taking you to court for every single penny of back child support you owe me, Jamal. I will garnish whatever fast food wages you manage to earn when you get out of a jail cell." The heavy front door slammed shut so violently, the audio feed peaked and crackled. Jada walked out, taking the secret child Jamal had risked everything to hide. Beverly began sobbing uncontrollably, wailing about the church elders and the humiliation they were about to face. Jamal collapsed onto the kitchen floor, his heavy breathing turning into raw, hyperventilating panic. The golden family that had sat in my living room demanding my total financial submission just days ago was now tearing each other to shreds in an empty house. I closed the audio feed on my laptop, shut the screen, and looked out over the quiet, peaceful mountains, holding my glass of wine steady in my hand. 6 months is an eternity in the financial sector. In 6 months, global markets recover, aggressive portfolios expand, and strategic dividends compound into massive wealth. For me, 6 months was the exact amount of time required to build an absolute fortress around my family. The mountain estate was no longer just a secure property, it was a thriving, beautiful home. Malik and Maya were enrolled in an elite private academy that actually valued their education rather than serving as a tax write-off for a cheating husband. They took horseback riding lessons on the weekends and spent their afternoons exploring the private trails behind our house. They never once asked why their father was not around. Children are incredibly perceptive. They thrive in environments completely devoid of tension and anxiety. I gave them peace and they flourished. While my children were learning to ride horses, Jamal was learning the intricate, devastating details of the federal justice system. The domino effect of my departure was spectacular, and I watched it all unfold through automated legal alerts sent directly to my encrypted inbox. The predatory online bank did exactly what I predicted. The moment the secondary mortgage went into default, their aggressive fraud department launched a forensic audit. They immediately flagged the forged signature and traced the digital footprint straight to Terrence. Terrence lost his real estate broker license and his notary public certification within the first 90 days of the investigation. He is currently facing a massive civil lawsuit from the bank and potential criminal charges from the state. Chloe successfully finalized her divorce, liquidating what little clean money Terrence had left and securing full custody of their remaining assets. She sent me a beautiful bouquet of white orchids last month with a card that simply read, "Thank you for lighting the match." Beverly suffered a fate far worse than financial ruin. She lost her social currency. The federal investigation required interviewing witnesses, including members of her sacred church congregation. The truth about the Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy payments and the luxury groceries became public knowledge among the church elders. When the pastor and the congregation learned that their pious platinum status matriarch had been actively facilitating her son's adultery using money stolen from his hardworking wife, they excommunicated her completely. Beverly was unceremoniously stripped of her committee titles and entirely ostracized from the community she valued more than her own soul. She was forced to face the exact public scandal she tried to blackmail me into preventing. And Jamal, my charismatic tech founder husband, was currently out on bail, awaiting a federal trial for mortgage fraud and wire fraud. The venture capitalists who backed his hollow startup pulled their funding the second the Internal Revenue Service launched their investigation into his commingled accounts. His company was dissolved, his luxury vehicles were repossessed, and he was forced to move back into the small, cramped house Beverly was currently renting after losing her own property to mounting legal fees. Jada took her son and vanished filing for state child support that Jamal could not even afford to pay. I was sitting in my sunroom reviewing a highly profitable quarterly report when my private security network chimed with a perimeter priority alert. The high-definition cameras tracking the main iron gate snapped into focus on my secondary monitor. I expected to see a premium delivery driver or my landscaping crew. Instead, I saw a rusted, dented sedan idling aggressively at the intercom speaker. A man stepped out of the vehicle. It was Jamal, but he looked like a distorted, pathetic shadow of the man I married. The tailored suits and the arrogant posture were completely gone. He was wearing a faded hoodie and wrinkled jeans. His face was drawn, his shoulders slumped, and he looked exhausted, desperate, and completely unhinged. He had clearly liquidated whatever pathetic scraps of cash he could find to hire a low-budget private investigator to trace my corporate shell companies and track down my physical location. Jamal marched up to the security camera, waving his arms wildly. I clicked the audio feed on my monitor. His voice blasted through the sunroom speakers, harsh and cracking with raw, unfiltered panic. "Kendra, I know you are in there," he screamed, slamming his fist against the reinforced steel bars of the gate. "Open this gate right now. You cannot hide my children from me. I am their father. I have rights. Open the gate, Kendra. You owe me an explanation." I did not panic. I did not feel a single ounce of fear. I felt the cool, supreme confidence of a woman who holds every single card in the entire deck. He thought he could drive across the country, show up at my fortress, and demand access to the family he destroyed. He thought volume and aggression would force my hand. He still did not understand the woman he was dealing with. I picked up my phone and dialed the direct line to my primary security contractor, who was stationed in the guardhouse at the bottom of the estate driveway. I instructed them to hold their position and not engage the target. I wanted to handle this personally. Then I dialed the lead partner of my ruthless litigation team. I told my attorney that the target had arrived on site and instructed them to prepare the final phase of the legal execution. I stood up from my desk, smoothing the fabric of my tailored trousers. I walked to the front door of my estate, unbothered and entirely calm. Jamal wanted to see his wife. He wanted to demand his rights. I was going to walk down that long driveway and hand him the absolute reality of his situation. He was about to learn that begging at the gates of the empire you tried to burn down only guarantees you a front row seat to your own total destruction. I stepped out of the heavy mahogany front doors, and the crisp mountain breeze immediately hit my face. My lead litigation attorney and my primary security director fell into step beside me, flanking me on either side as we began the long walk down the sweeping paved driveway. The distance from the main house to the wrought iron security gates was over a quarter of a mile. It was a deliberate architectural choice when I purchased the estate designed to grant me absolute privacy and distance from the outside world. Today, that long driveway served an entirely different purpose. It gave Jamal plenty of time to watch my approach. It gave him time to realize the sheer magnitude of the fortress I had built with the wealth he foolishly thought he could control. I was wearing a tailored cream cashmere sweater and perfectly pressed slacks, projecting the effortless quiet luxury of a woman who completely controls her own destiny. I walked with my head held high, my posture relaxed, but commanding. As we drew closer, the high-definition cameras tracking the perimeter had not exaggerated his physical deterioration. Jamal looked absolutely destroyed. His hands tightly gripped the black iron bars of the security gate, and his knuckles were completely white from the strain. The man who used to spend thousands of dollars on custom-tailored suits and premium grooming products was now standing in a faded, wrinkled hoodie. His eyes were bloodshot and darting frantically searching my face for any sign of the compliant, forgiving wife he used to manipulate. He would find absolutely nothing. "Kendra," he shouted, his voice cracking as soon as I came within earshot. "You have to listen to me. Please just tell the guards to open the gate so we can talk. I just want to see Malik and Maya. I am their father. You cannot legally keep me away from them." I stopped exactly 3 feet from the heavy iron gate, maintaining a safe and calculated distance. I did not raise my voice. I spoke to him with the exact same flat professional tone I would use to terminate a bankrupt client who had ignored my financial advice. "You do not dictate what is legal anymore, Jamal," I said, looking directly into his desperate bloodshot eyes. "You lost that privilege the moment you and your brother forged my signature on a federal banking document." He flinched as if I had physically struck him. He let go of the bars with one hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. "You do not understand," he pleaded, his voice dropping into a pathetic whine. "Jada took my son and disappeared. My company is gone. The federal prosecutors froze everything I have left. I have absolutely nothing, Kendra. I just need to see my twins. They are the only family I have left." I nodded to my lead attorney, who stepped forward carrying a thick, pristine envelope made of heavy cream cardstock. My attorney did not say a word. He simply slid the envelope through the narrow gap in the wrought iron bars directly into Jamal's chest. Jamal fumbled to catch it, his hands shaking violently as he tore the seal open. He pulled out the thick stack of court-stamped documents. His eyes scanned the heavy black text and the official judicial signatures. I watched the remaining color drain completely from his face as his brain processed the legal reality of his situation. "That is an emergency custody order," I stated, my voice cutting through the quiet mountain air like glass. "Signed and expedited by a family court judge yesterday morning. You are looking at a mandate granting me sole physical and legal custody of Malik and Maya. You have been granted 0 visitation rights, not supervised, not temporary. 0. The judge entirely revoked your access until your impending federal fraud trial concludes. And given the overwhelming evidence of your financial crimes, you will be spending the next decade in a federal penitentiary where visitation is conducted through reinforced glass. Jamal stared at the papers, his mouth opening and closing in absolute shock. "You cannot do this," he stammered, crushing the legal documents in his trembling hands. "You cannot prove I am a danger to my kids. A judge would never sign this so fast just because of a white-collar financial investigation. You do not have enough proof to justify zero visitation." "I actually had an overwhelming amount of proof, Jamal," I replied, taking a slight step closer to the gate to ensure he heard every single syllable. "I had a star witness who was more than willing to sit for a sworn deposition. Someone who sat inside your mother's house and witnessed the entire coordinated effort to siphon my assets and fund your mistress." Jamal frowned, shaking his head in confusion. "My mother would never testify against me. Terrence is facing his own charges. Jada is gone. Who could you possibly have?" "Chloe," I said, letting the name drop like an anvil. Jamal staggered back a step, the realization hitting him with the force of a freight train. "Chloe filed for divorce the exact same morning the bank seized your accounts," I explained, my tone completely devoid of mercy. "Your brother thought he could intimidate her into keeping quiet about the fraudulent notary stamps and the shell companies. But Chloe is incredibly smart. She gathered every single digital receipt, every hidden ledger, and every church donation record your mother tried to bury. She handed my legal team a perfectly wrapped gift. In exchange for her comprehensive cooperation and testimony, my legal team ensured Chloe successfully navigated her divorce. She took half of Terrence's remaining clean assets, and she walked away completely free from your toxic family. Her sworn testimony proving you and your mother conspired to commit financial abuse while engaging in federal fraud was the exact leverage the judge needed to sever your parental rights entirely." Jamal dropped the crushed legal documents onto the pavement. His knees actually buckled and he sank down onto the hard concrete curb directly outside my massive iron gates. The arrogant tech founder, the man who paraded his mistress around Atlanta on my dime, the man who thought he could bleed me dry and win full custody of my children was now sitting in the dirt sobbing into his hands. "Kendra, please," he begged, his voice breaking into a hideous gut-wrenching wail. "I traded everything for a lie. Jada never loved me. She only loved the money you were making. My mother cannot even show her face at church anymore because the entire congregation knows she is a thief. Terrence will not speak to me. I ruined my entire life. You are the only person who ever truly had my back. You are the only one who ever built anything real with me. I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry. Just give me one more chance. We are family, Kendra. Please do not leave me out here with nothing." I looked down at the man crying on the curb. For years I had exhausted myself trying to prove my worth to a family that viewed me as nothing more than an automated teller machine. I had sacrificed my time, my peace, and my emotional bandwidth to build an empire for a man who despised me for my own success. I searched my heart for any lingering trace of sympathy, any small shred of the love I once held for him. I found absolutely nothing. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is total, supreme indifference. "You did not lose everything, Jamal," I said, my voice soft but incredibly firm. "You traded it. You traded a loyal, brilliant wife for a cubic zirconia lifestyle and a cheap ego boost. You traded the absolute security of your children's future to play pretend with a fake tech empire. You made your choices, and now you are experiencing the completely natural consequences of your own arrogance." I turned my back on him. I did not look over my shoulder as he screamed my name. I did not flinch as he beat his fists against the iron gate. I simply nodded to my security director and instructed him to contact local law enforcement to remove the trespasser from the perimeter. I walked back up the long, sweeping driveway. The mountain air smelled of pine and absolute freedom. I stepped through the heavy mahogany doors of my fortress, and the quiet safety of the house wrapped around me like a shield. I walked into my immaculate custom kitchen and pulled a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir from the climate-controlled wine fridge. I poured a generous glass, listening to the rich liquid cascade into the crystal. I walked out through the glass doors onto the expansive back deck. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the rolling hills and the private acreage. Down on the manicured lawn, Malik and Maya were running through the grass chasing a bright yellow butterfly, their laughter echoing purely and safely into the evening air. Their offshore trust funds were locked and compounding. Their futures were completely shielded from the chaos of the people who shared their DNA. I took a slow, deep sip of the dark wine, letting the complex flavors settle on my tongue. The debt was paid, the threat was eliminated, the vanishing act was flawlessly complete. The most powerful lesson from this story is that your self-worth should never be determined by the people who exploit you, even if they are family. Blood does not automatically entitle anyone to your hard-earned success, peace, or sanity. When faced with deep betrayal, true strength isn't about screaming or seeking petty revenge. It is about recognizing your value, setting unbreakable boundaries, and quietly executing a plan to protect yourself and your children. You must learn to walk away from toxic environments that drain you. Ultimately, your greatest revenge is simply building a beautiful, peaceful life without them. If you have ever had to set tough boundaries to protect your peace, share your experience in the comments below, and hit subscribe for more empowering stories.